The great King Bharata in his old age gave over his throne to his son and retired into the forest. He built a small hut out of reeds and grass on the banks of a river in the Himalayan forest. Didn't matter that he had ruled over untold numbers of people, resided in marble palaces, and drank from jeweled cups. There he lived on roots and wild herbs collected by his own hands and meditated upon Him who is always present in the soul of man. Days, months, and even years passed. One day, a deer came to drink water nearby, where he was meditating. At the same moment, a lion roared off in the distance. The deer was so terrified that she, without satisfying her thirst, made a big jump to cross the river. The deer was with young, and this extreme fear made her give birth to a little fawn, and immediately after she fell dead. The fawn fell into the water and was being carried away by the stream when it caught the eyes of the king. The king rescued the fawn from the water, took it to his cottage, made a fire, and with care and attention brought it back to life. Then took the fawn under his protection, feeding it on soft grass and fruit. The fawn thrived under the paternal care of the retired king and grew into a beautiful deer. Then he whose mind had been strong enough to break away from the attachment to power became attached to the deer which he had saved. And as he became fonder and fonder of the deer, the less and less he could concentrate his mind upon the Lord. When the deer went out to graze in the forest, if the return was delayed, the mind of the king would become anxious and worried. He would think, perhaps my little one has been attacked by some tiger, or perhaps some other danger it encountered. Otherwise, why is it late? Some years passed in this way, but one day death came, and the royal sage laid himself down to die. But his mind, instead of being concentrated on himself, was thinking about the deer, and with his eyes flexed upon the sad looks of his beloved deer, his soul left the body. As a result of this, in the next birth, he was born as a deer. But no karma is lost, and all the great and good deeds done by him as a king and sage bore their fruit. This deer was born Jatismara, and remembered his past birth, even though he was speechless and was living in an animal body. After the usual years of a deer's life, it died and was next born as the youngest son of a rich Brahmin. And in that life also he remembered all his past. Even in his childhood was determined to not get entangled in the good and evil of life. The child, as it grew up, was strong and healthy, but would not speak a word, for fear of getting mixed up with worldly affairs. His thoughts were always on the infinite, and he lived only to wear out his past karma. In course of time, the father died, and the sons divided the property among themselves. And thinking that the youngest was a dumb man, they seized his share. Their charity extended only so far as to give him enough food to live upon. The wives of the brothers were often very harsh to him, putting him to do all the work. And if he was unable to do everything they wanted, the wives of the brothers were often very harsh to him, putting him to do all the hard work. And if he was unable to do everything they wanted, they would treat him very bad. But he showed neither irritation nor fear, and neither did he speak a word. One day, when the wives of the brothers had treated him worse than usual, Bharata went out of the house, seated himself under the shadow of a tree, and rested. Now it happened that the king of the country was passing by, carried in a palanquin on the shoulders of bearers. One of the bearers had fallen ill, and so his attendants were looking about for a man to replace him. They came upon Bharata, seated under a tree, and seeing he was a strong young man, they asked him if he would take the place of the sick man in bearing the king's palanquin. But Bharata did not reply. Seeing that he was so able-bodied, the king's servants caught hold of him and placed the pole on his shoulders. Without speaking a word, Bharata went on. Very soon after this, the king remarked that the palanquin was not being evenly carried. Looking out of the palanquin, addressed the new bearer, saying, "Fool, rest a while. If your shoulders hurt, take some time to rest." Then Bharata, laying the pole of the palanquin down, opened his lips for the first time in his life and spoke. "Who do you label an idiot, O king? Whom do you ask to put the palanquin down? Who do you claim to be worn out? Whom do you refer to as you, if you mean this mass of flesh? When you say you, O king, it is made of the same material as you are. It is unaware and has no sense of fatigue or suffering. If it's the mind, it's my mind too. The mind is global. Yet, if the term you refers to anything more, it is the self, the reality inside me, which is identical to that which exists within you, and it is the one in the universe. Do you mean to say, O king, that the self may ever get worn out, exhausted, or injured? The palanquin move unevenly as a result of my desire, O king, and the desire of this body not to step on the unfortunate worms crawling on the path. But the self was never tired, it was never weak. It never bore the pole of the palanquin, for it is omnipotent and omnipresent. And so he dwelt on the nature of the soul and on the highest knowledge. The king, who was proud of his learning, descended from the palanquin and fell at the feet of Bharata. I ask your pardon, O mighty one. I did not know that you were a sage when I asked you to carry me. Bharata blessed him and departed. He then resumed the even tenor of his previous life. When Bharata left the body, he was freed forever from the bondage of birth. So, the story of the great King Bharata teaches us several valuable lessons. One of the most significant lessons is the danger of attachment. Although Bharata was a wise and experienced king who had renounced his power and retired to a simple life in the forest, he became attached to the deer he had rescued and raised. This attachment distracted him from his spiritual path and prevented him from achieving his ultimate goal of merging with the divine. Another lesson we can learn from the story is the importance of staying focused on our path and resisting the temptations of worldly affairs. Even when Bharata was mistreated by his brothers and their wives, he remained calm and silent, keeping his thoughts focused on the path. His spiritual discipline and determination helped him overcome his suffering and achieve enlightenment. Finally, the story also emphasizes the concept of karma, which states that our actions determine what happens to us in this or other lives. Bharata's good deeds as a king were not lost, and even though he was reborn as a deer and later as a Brahmin's son, he retained his knowledge and spiritual awareness from his previous lives, leading to his enlightenment. This is Inspired Data. Thank you for watching. If you want more life-changing lessons, share true stories, subscribe to this channel. You can also go and watch any of the other videos on this channel. And don't forget, you have the power to change your life.